So today we are recipe testing for our latest Nanolot release, which is a Sudan Rume varietal. It's actually our first time releasing this varietal, which feels weird to me at the moment because we've been drinking so many of them over the last few weeks as we've been selecting fresh coffees to bring in for you legends. This is a hybrid washed processing from a producer called Cafe Granja La Esperanza. Probably butchered that like crazy. They're a Colombian producer. Their coffees will definitely be on the world stage in Melbourne. And this coffee was actually used to win the Swedish Barista Champs, I believe. Very cool coffee, lots of like blackcurrant sort of flavors, lychee, really sweet, delicious. Sudan Rume is fast becoming my favorite varietal, or one of my favorites, and we've got a few of them lined up, so you're going to get to taste quite a few of these. So what I'm doing is we've been brewing a lot of our coffees the same sort of way with the filters. So on the filter side, so we're using the April brewer with the Kalita 185 filter, 14 gram dose, 200 grams of water, and 2 pours, so like 100 grams per pour, doing concentric circles to wet all the coffee for about 50 grams, and then a 50 gram center pour, and then doing that twice, but with a long bloom, so like a minute 30 bloom. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to have the water fully saturate the coffee particles, the granules, pulling all those flavonoids to the surface, and then the next pour, the second pour, strips all that flavor from the surface of the coffee, helping us to have high extractions with a very simple recipe that we can replicate on bar and works for a wide range of coffee. So it's a bit of an adapted recipe from something I learned from Thomas at Motors Coffee in Paris. They use a different brewer but a very similar style, and it works so consistently well. So often when we release new coffees, you guys want to know like what drastic change have you made to your brewing for this particular coffee, and the answer is very little, because you know, if you're drastically changing every time you brew, you're just going to have like very inconsistent results, and we're aiming for consistency. So on our bar, you're going to find that we brew very much the same way every time, and we adjust our grind setting, sometimes our water temperature, to adapt to manipulate the flavor of the coffee to be in line with what we want to taste. So that's what I'm doing now, starting off with my 14 gram dose, grinding at our sort of like stock standard grind setting on our EK, which is 12 on our EK, 94 degree water, same recipe, and then we'll taste and adapt from there. So yes. Expected to taste it and say good things. Thank you. Have a coffee. Okay. Thanks.
Rock. Paparazzi.
I need thoughts, please.
These thoughts. Oh, I see.
Might adjust the recipe. It's good. It's got good texture, good sweetness. I'm trying to think if there are any changes I would make. It tastes like there's been a lot of extraction, so maybe coarsen up the grind slightly. So I think I might try that, but I want to hear what the guys have to think.
It's good character. If you're saying over extracted, you're the brewer.
Was 315 total brew time.
What was the recipe?
14,200, 2 equal pours, 94 water.
I generally go for like 215, 230 in that range. But it doesn't really matter.
So I think I might coarsen up the grind and try one more.
Yeah, I'd say faster extraction. Because this is not bad, but the flavor character is not present. Right?
That's what I'm. Okay. So this is the second brew. Same recipe. We just coarsened up the grind, and this is what's so beautiful about using the same sort of method or recipe, and then tweaking one variable at a time. So. We just found the first cup to be a little bit muddled in terms of flavor clarity, maybe a little bit astringent, a bit hollow, signs of over extraction. So I dialed back on the grind. In other words, I went a bit wider on the grind, but coarser. So on the EK I went to 12.5, which is half a stop coarser. And what's cool is if you're using our coffees as a benchmark, I would say if you dialed for like Magoti, that's a good one. You guys have just had Magoti recently in the sub box. So if you dialed for Magoti washed, go slightly coarser for the Cafe Granja La Esperanza Sudan Rume hybrid washed, and you should get great results. I reckon you can also updose slightly. So I don't have enough coffee here from these sample roasts to, these test roasts to be able to tell you whether that's true or not. But I would say you can probably updose ever so slightly for like a bit higher TDS. Might be quite nice, a bit bigger, juicier. I'll be playing with that as well. Now for espresso. Okay, so we're going to espresso test. I've got 20 grams of coffee ground on the EK, and I'm going to start with a 1:2. I'm actually going to go a bit longer. I'm going to go 1:2.5. So I'm going to go 20 in. Where's my WD2? Hello. So I'm going to aim for 45 grams out. "27 seconds, 44.6 grams out." So pretty much spot on. It smells amazing, super floral. Yeah, the first thing is just the texture. Texture's so good. It's just like velvety. Got a beautiful acidity. Reminds me so much of like a really good SL28. So just like lots of blackcurrant, blueberry sort of flavors. Let's see what the boys think.
Happy with that.
Texture's good, sweetness is good, acidity is good.
Super tasty.
Pretty well
Quite
balanced.
extracted, yeah.
I would be quite interested to do like a longer shot, like 50 ounce.
I'd go not longer, I'd do the same recipe but faster. Give it a bash.
But a little bit coarser.
Yeah, slightly coarser. Give it a bash. That's really tasty.
The recipe testing and TDS tests, or like extraction testing that we're doing, the
Yes.
faster shots are actually giving us higher
Yeah, so we're
extraction
finding
rates.
that the coarser grind sizes with slightly quicker percolation times at like a 1:2 or a 1:2.2 ratio, which is kind of where we are with this espresso, right? The faster flow rate of the water actually extracts the coffee better than allowing the water to percolate through the coffee slower. And we found like
Counterintuitive to what a lot of people would think.
yes, for certain.
Less contact time.
Yeah, in theory, but I think we've learned over the last few years that there's many different ways to extract coffee, and using the movement of the water is a pretty good way to do it. And so like, that is why I found the best balance of flavor at a really nice tight concentration. So you get a high extraction at not too loose of a concentration. So it's not too dilute of a shot, so it's nice and intense, super tasty.
Let's go try it. Jumping over to espresso, what I did is I started at a grind setting that I thought would be good for this coffee. It turned out to be good for what I thought the parameters should be. So like 1 to 2.25 ratio, 40 grams in, 20 grams in, 45 grams out. The brew time was about 27 seconds. Our boiler sitting at 93 degrees, 9 bars of pressure. And the coffee was good. It was really, really tasty. Again, we felt that a slightly faster brew could be beneficial to this coffee, and it was. So Fani suggested we go slightly coarser, and I did that. I went about, I think 0.1 coarse on our EK, 20 grams in, 46 grams out this time. I was aiming for the same 45 gram yield, and the coffee was much sweeter, very balanced, clarity of flavor was there, really, really great. And I would use the same recipe black and for milk as well. So those are some good starting points. You're going to have different water to us though. You're going to have a different espresso machine, different grinder, but these are really good starting points to help you to take your bag of coffee and make some decisions. So if you've had on the Goatee Hill washed and you're dialed for, it's a great benchmark coffee because we have this coffee most of the year. So if you're dialed on that coffee at a certain grind setting, go slightly coarser for this coffee and you should find yourself in the right ballpark. It's always fun working with new coffees, and we do that all the time. Like we release a lot of new coffees every year. And you always need a starting point. So I often, I sympathize with people buying like a 250 gram bag of coffee, and especially if you're making espresso at home, it's really hard to just like go home, throw the coffee in your grinder and try and guess the correct grind size. And you do end up wasting a bit of coffee, and I think that's the sad reality with espresso brewing, is that you are going to waste some coffee dialing in. I know that Lance Hendrick has recently done a really cool video on interpreting the information on the coffee bag and where to start on your particular grinder based on that information. I would definitely recommend that video. So stepping up to the plate, what I did is I took our standard recipes for filter and espresso as we would brew on our bar every single day, started there and then made some adjustments. So the first filter brew was delicious. It was really, really tasty. But remember, we're working with one of the world's best coffees from one of the world's best producers. So we don't want tasty, we want fantastic, we want excellent. So we want to tweak, we want to change, we want to see what we can get from the coffee. So the first cup was probably a bit over extracted. Our standard starting point grind size was a little bit too fine. We went slightly coarser, brewed again with the same recipe. The results were fantastic, much better clarity of flavor, very sweet, balanced, great texture, very, very happy with the second cup. So that's great. Like with filter, I find it's much easier to get to a fantastic cup of coffee faster than espresso. There's just more time, the water's flowing slower, there's more time to get a great extraction, whereas with espresso everything happens so fast, it's under pressure, it's so hard to make good espresso. So if you are struggling with that at home, you're not the only one, I promise you, and you're fighting against all of these different variables. So I hope that was helpful, guys, and we'll see you in the next one.